Thanks for coming along, everyone. Great to have you. We're very excited to be having our Maintain schools now joining up to Robin. So this is an opportunity to show you a demo of Robin, tell you a bit about the background behind it, and also answer any questions you have. And hopefully there'll be plenty of time for that. The idea behind Robin is to stop you having to trawl through your school websites and policies and to do that job for you. To introduce myself and give a bit of the background behind Robin, my background is really with The Key. I have been with The Key since it started as a government-funded pilot over 15 years ago, and so have spent a long time helping schools with policies, governance, compliance, and all of those things. And along with James, who was one of the co-founders of Governor Hub, we got very excited when AI came along and we could see that there was an opportunity to do some of the things we knew that schools, struggled with or spent too much time on, especially around managing their policies and thinking about the compliance of their websites. So, we had that experience helping schools with that for a long time, and then saw a new technology that we thought could really help. And I probably don't need to say this to people on the call, I'm sure you know it all too well, but we just knew that school websites were hard work, that it's difficult to stay on top of everything that is due for review or needs updating, that in terms of compliance, the DfE rules are quite complicated and often change, and also change throughout the year. And also just that, schools are very busy places, and then they've got this website that they need to stay on top of. And managing a website and doing that well is hard for anybody. The other thing is, we think this is important. School websites are important. Compliance is obviously important, but also beyond that, it's really important that you have good information available to the school community, and that your policies don't, or your information doesn't kind of create high admin or kind of issues if there's suddenly something that hasn't been communicated well. And also we know that you often spend quite a lot of time on this stuff. And we definitely see that in the results from Robin. So we now have over 800 schools using Robin, and obviously that means we've checked all of their websites. And so we can see the results kind of nationally in terms of what school websites look like. And we find from the Robin results that about a third of school policies are overdue review that we check. In terms of the compliance check, we normally, on average, find about 80% of the required information. And this isn't a compliance thing, but it's quite interesting that we find about 20% of schools have more than 50 policies, which is a lot. I don't think that would be a surprise to anyone on the call, anyone who works in schools, but it's really interesting to be able to see that information directly from what Robin's checking. And yeah, really, I think a big reason for that is because manual website checks are just not ideal. I'm sure there's been no other way to do this until now, so don't feel bad about manually checking your school websites. But it is time-consuming to organize and to do. It's not necessarily that accurate. Like the DfE guidance is quite complicated. I think if you're a very busy person doing it, it's hard to do it well. And also that check can quickly become out of date and end up siloed. You might have spreadsheets or other systems that you're using to record that information, but what happens to it then, and kind of how usable is it? We could see that there's a better way, and that's why we've built Robin. So that brings me across to a demo. So this is a demo school, not one of the real ones. And so here you can see what you'll see when you get your Robin results. And there's two parts to what Robin will check on a school website. There's a compliance check and a policy audit. So the compliance check is checking your school against the requirements that the DfE publishes for what Maintain schools must or should publish online, or for an academy if the school's an academy. And so we've taken each of those requirements in that guidance and turned them into individual things that we check, that Robin checks across a whole bunch of different areas, as you can see here. You get those headline numbers, but also you can see line by line, requirement by requirement, what Robin has checked. I think it's quite important to understand Robin is not just doing a Google search where we're saying, can we find a telephone number, or can we find the details of the SENCO? Robin first decides where to looking in kind of logical places on the website, as a parent would, or maybe like an offset inspector would, and then summarizes what's been found and tells you whether that requirement has been met or not. And the range of things that are being checked is really broad. It's contact details, it's opening hours, Ofsted information, performance information. And so Robin checks each of those things separately and gives you those individual judgments. For maintained schools, we recently added the new requirements that came in to check for schools to publish more detailed governance information. So I'll just show you that at the bottom. The DfE extended what it expects maintained schools to publish, not just basic governance information, but also information about when people were appointed, attendance records, business interests. And so actually we find schools are often missing that at the moment because it's a new requirement. Within the compliance check, you can also go into an individual requirement and give us feedback or update the requirement based on what you see. So if you see that if Robin spots that you've missed something and then you go in and add that to the website, you can record that as being fixed. And you can also let us know if Robin got something wrong, which is really useful to us. It helps us improve Robin. We take that feedback and look at why that happened, but also means you can switch that cross to a tick just to make sure your records are right. You can also remove requirements if you have something in your school that means the requirement doesn't apply, for example. We know that some special schools want to remove the performance data items because they just don't publish those. They don't think they're appropriate for their school. At the same time as doing the compliance check, Robin does a policy audit. And that is a check of all of the policies that are found on the school website, putting them into categories, checking the required ones are there, and checking the review dates. This example of a school we have actually publishes their policies in multiple languages, so you can see that that's pulled through. And for each policy, you can see what type of policy it is. You can open the policy directly. You can open the page that policy was found on, and you can also see the last review date and the next review date if that was included in the document. And Robin's reading the contents of the document to work that out. What we often find with the policy audit is it helps schools spot also kind of old policies that are lying around on the website that they didn't realize were there. Maybe their policies page has everything they expected it to, but the other pages on the website might still have old policies on them. And so each time Robin does a website review, you get both the compliance check and the policy audit. On the policy audit, you can also give us feedback on those results. And across the board of Robin, you can also export results either to a spreadsheet or to a PDF. And as you run Robin kind of multiple times over a membership, you can see the history of all of your checks there as well. So that gives you an overview of the main kind of features of Robin. As Beck said, we had a couple of schools that are on the call that were very brave, and thank you to them in saying that we could run a check for them and then share it with the group. So we've got 2 schools here where we've done this. So just kind of gives you a sense of how live this can be. They said that today and we ran Robin today. And so for each of those schools, for one of them here is the example of the compliance check where Robin has looked through. You can see for Warden Hill the overall results, and then you can see each of those individual things that's been checked. They do have their total open hours, which lots of people end up missing. And I did have a look at this one earlier, and the school has kind of older performance data in this first example, but doesn't yet have the 2024 data, which is what the DfE now expects to be there. So like Robin has flagged that accuracy, and that can obviously help that school go and put that latest data onto their website. We also often see with performance data that although people are publishing some, they might not be publishing the exact ones the DfE says they should. So that can be really helpful. For the other school that was a brave volunteer, we have the policy audit here. So this is a nice example of a policy audit. Robin has found all of the expected required policies, has picked out that one was due for review in February. So that's kind of flagged as orange in that it's quite a recent date, but yeah, anyone looking at that policy would see that it was overdue review. And yeah, I didn't check how many, but this school seems to have a pretty typical range of policies, and in really good shape in terms of them being mainly up to date. You can, if you're interested in how Robin has worked out its kind of review dates, click on this little toggle on the left here and see a more complete view of what Robin found when reading the document and kind of how Robin concluded that that was the review date. Yeah, so I think it's always nice to see real examples of Robin in action rather than the demo. So thanks to the 2 schools that allowed that. I'll come back across to my slides. And just before we get into any questions, I think it's worth saying people often wonder whether you need to do anything to get Robin to work, whether you need to set it up. And they really our aim for you is that kind of Robin just works. There's no setup process. You don't have to do anything to your school website or kind of tell us anything about it. We get the school information, including your provision and age range and everything from get information about schools from the DFE. And that's also where the website URL should be. We don't care what website platform you use. Robin just looks at what's available on the web. And we notify you after each review, and you can have unlimited users. And we've got some nice quotes here. The majority of our early schools have come from trusts. So there's some examples there of the different trusts that are using Robin and their kind of feedback on how useful it's proving for them. We've also got a bunch of individual schools now using it as well. Before I get on to just sort of pricing and your options, yeah, we've got some time for some questions. Bex, I don't know if you want to.
Yep. So just as well for those free website checks, I'll also send you out all of the information about them after the demo. Yes, so we've got a question come in asking how many schools have you already checked?
Like I want to load up the questions on my screen. So we've got about 850 plus schools that are already members of Robin. So obviously we're checking those websites. We've also done quite a lot of testing on other websites as we've developed it. So we're definitely into the thousands of school websites we've looked at. But yeah, in terms of schools that are members of Robin, that's over 850 now.
Wow. And growing.
Yes.
And we had a couple of questions which came in before. So someone asked, as it uses AI, I'm interested to know whether any information has been collected from our website and used elsewhere.
Yeah, that's a sort of easy one to answer. No, all of the work that Robin does in terms of its use of AI is private to you, and isn't shared in any way with the AI systems that we use to do that. Just in the same way that any of your kind of data held with Microsoft or Google is kind of protected in terms of data protection as your own, and we're just processing that for you. So although we are looking at publicly available information, yeah, we're not doing anything that means that data is used to train other systems. Interestingly, school websites are public, and so lots of those AI systems will already be looking at school websites and school information anyway. But yeah, that's not what we're doing. We also don't share that data with anybody else, which I think is important. We're really kind of mindful of the fact that it's not necessarily something that you would want to be shared in terms of gaps in compliance or just generally what Robin's finding. We don't share that information with anyone other than the schools that are subscribing or that have given us permission to do that.
Okay, great. And I guess on a slight similar vein, how do you ensure accuracy with your checks?
Yeah, great. So I showed you when I was looking at the demo, the option to give feedback as you use Robin. So there's kind of two parts to this. One is we are really keen on getting that feedback. So as schools use Robin and they give us feedback, we're able to use that to continuously improve. But also generally, we do a lot of work to kind of test and ensure the accuracy. And we get very little feedback in terms of Robin having got things wrong. I was looking at the most recent data, and in terms of that direct feedback, it's less than 1% of requirements that we've checked where we've had any kind of questions about the judgment. The other interesting thing with Robin actually is often the judgments can be a bit subjective. Some of the requirements, for example, on uniform policy or on the kind of information that you might publish within your policies just can be a little bit subjective. So there might be times where Robin judges something that you just see differently, and you want to change it for that reason, rather than there being an accuracy question. We also sometimes find that when we first run a school, there's something a bit quirky or different about their setup, or as I showed, there might be requirements they want to remove. And so often that first check is a good opportunity to make sure everything's working correctly and to make sure you've got your website compliance check configured as you want it, kind of to be accurate for how you check compliance. And yeah, as I said, there are particular types of checks like performance data ones, or also the music development plan. Schools are required to publish a music development plan. That was a bit of a random requirement that came in, and some schools and trusts have just decided that it's a should and they don't think it's worth them prioritizing. And so they remove that from their check. And that means they're getting the accuracy for what they are committed to kind of publishing, rather than necessarily everything the DfE has as a should.
Okay, great. And we've just got one last question we've probably got time for. Do you have any future plans for Robin to check more than website compliance and policies?
Yeah, absolutely. So right now we are we're just checking exactly what's covered on that DfE page in terms of what schools must or should publish. But yeah, there's loads of potential for Robin to do more. We've done some early experiments with more thoroughly checking the individual policies. So we had one looking at the child protection policy and looking at the SEN information report and checking whether the contents of those policies meets those requirements, which are kind of separate to the ones listed in terms of what you have to have on your website. We're also just learning from schools. We've heard that there's kind of lots of people are interested in website accessibility in terms of something that a sort of a website analysis tool could help with. And longer term, and this is just interesting generally with AI, I think there's loads of potential for tools like Robin or Robin itself to go beyond just the school website in terms of helping you with kind of compliance and those kind of manual tasks that you feel like you're spending a lot of time on that you'd rather not be.
Great. Yeah, no, it's exciting to see what could be coming up. Great. Yeah, we also had someone ask about the cost and running costs year by year. So I think you're going to touch on that now, Joe.
Yeah, great. I can't see the questions you can see, Bex.
They've all been answered.
Good. Yeah, so in terms of subscription, we have two options, and the difference here is just how often Robin runs. So each website review, as I said, includes the compliance check, the policy audit, and all of those other features I showed you. And you can choose between a half-termly or a monthly tracker. So that's Robin running half-termly 6 times a year for $199, or monthly, so 12 times a year for $299. And that just comes down to how often you think it will be useful for Robin to be checking your school websites. And we really like the idea of it running as regularly as possible and kind of just ticking along in the background, and meaning that the workload really gets flattened throughout the year. And so yeah, that the dates that Robin runs are also flexible. So we'll set a kind of default schedule for your half-termly or monthly checks, but then within Robin itself, you can go and you can tweak those if you've got particular governing body meetings or leadership meetings where you think it would be useful for Robin to run at a particular time. So yeah, exactly when those checks happen is up to you. And yeah, we're just signing up our, as I said, our kind of first set of individual schools, and our next run for those schools is on Thursday. And so if you would like to sign up before then, you would be included and get your first review on Thursday. And there's some information on the screen there, and Bex will follow up with an email to check in. If you weren't sure yet and obviously decided to sign up a bit later, we just have regular start dates when that next run would be. And so it's not that you have to decide by Wednesday, but if you're keen to get a set of reviews this week, then let us know and you'll be included in that group getting their results on Thursday. Thanks, everyone.